It's been a very long project, so for us to continue to speak about that, sometimes we skip a lot of things because we think that they are so clear and already present, which is not true in the exhibition, that sometimes we tend in this long time process of these projects at the very end to concentrate the essence in 2 words. And it's very clear to everybody, clearly, because has been so intense, the work about that. This is more or less what happens for all the projects that we do at CCA, that they take a long period of time of different levels, different stage of investigation, and at the end what is coming to you, to the public, is an exhibition that you've seen there, and a book, a little bit on the website, sometimes a special website. In this case is a website which is produced as a little bit as a TV program, so in which you have not the right to make any choice, but when you go to a certain time you see certain things. And also in this case there will be this book that will be, for us is also an experiment, presented as an e-book on iTunes in the next weeks. It is not an application, it is for the moment just a simple, how can I say, PDF adapted to the visual content of that. So perhaps what is interesting to speak a little bit, we had some question, generally we have always some question, how do you do the book, what is the reason of the book at CCA? Perhaps we can just speak a little bit of that and then comment a little bit on the specific content of the book in respect to the exhibition. So we, as you see here, we have some of the books of CCA, and what we did 2 years ago was trying to collect all the books of CCA in a small booklet, which we update every time, which is making the kind of history of CCA through all the publication that has been done since 1989 when CCA started, and is always, can I say, a progressive. These photographs are showing you a progression of the, how can I say, shelving that you need in order to and also to host all these books, and also how different they are. Because one thing that CCA we decided to do is, and we increased in the last years, is not to do like most of the institution, a kind of recognizable publishing system for the books that we do, but to every time work with different publisher, because every topic, every problem perhaps is approached best in collaboration with some specific different publisher. So every time is a joint work of CCA and the authors that we look for, and the contributors and the architects, and a different publisher in accordance with the specific topic, the specific things that we want to do. With Journey, we work with Akhtar, with this last book we work with Lars Muller as part in the past, with the book on architecture and uniform we work with Azam. So is a strategy which tries to take advantage of different know-hows and different system of relationship and connection that and competencies that each publisher has developed in his work or her work. So how to keep this at the same time connected to give a kind of rule to this kind of decision that we take is mainly about using the format. So CCA, we decided to keep and to have certain size and format for the different books. So we have the small books like this one, which is mainly the manifesto of the contemporary architects. We have the thematic books, and we have the more archival related books like this one on Jim Sterling, that by the way is the next exhibition which will come very soon. And then we have this kind of publication, which is, how can I say, an accompanying strategy about that. And another small booklet, which is publishing, printing on demand, which is now the first one we did is Journeys. Is there? Oh, here it is. That is exploring some work that CCA did. This was mainly related to a different way to look at the exhibition Journeys. The next one will be about this workshop that we did at CCA. So it's a way to tell the story of certain things, the backstage or the after stage or the after thoughts. In fact, it's called afterwards, of some of the things that we did. So what does it mean today? I don't know, because as you know, the online publishing and online presence is changing a lot. Anyway, we would like always to do this kind of publication, even if it's small, in order to condense certain kind of things. Perhaps, Giovanna, after this, you can speak and explain what is the difference, for example, from a book and exhibition that we do. We don't do catalogs of exhibition. So what you find in the book is not at all what you see in the exhibition. Is something different, as what we do on the web is different from the book and the exhibition.
I think that, sorry, I lost the voice. I think it's in the history of CCA editorial strategy to work on a book more than on a catalog. And the idea is so that the book has a longer life and an independent life that is connected through the topic with the exhibition, but also it could stand by its own. We also have to recognize that is also a way of making what we do as an exhibition or as a research known all over the world, because through this object, that the book is the way the CCA is known. There's a lot of people who knows the CCA because of the books and not because of the exhibition or vice versa. So it is also an interesting dialogue for a curator to think about at this point all these different medium that we have. So when we do a research, then we could do an exhibition, we could do a book, we could do an e-book, we could do a website, and deciding if all these things they are actually duplicate of themselves, or they could have a very different strategy or tell different stories. So the thing, for example, for Imperfect Health, what we decided to do, and that's also a change, let's say, a shift in time. So the exhibition opened in October, the book is coming out now, the website also was a little bit delayed. So the life of these different medium are actually parallel to what is happening in the gallery.
So perhaps I am an author, but I play as if I am a kind of Charlie Rose of the situation. So how did we select the so you can answer also for me, but I pretend to be somebody else. How did we select nous avons choisi
les auteurs?
Ouais.
Donc c'est sûr que en faisant la recherche pour l'exposition, on a rencontré, on a lu plusieurs livres sur les maladies qu'on voulait toucher dans la recherche, mais aussi sur des livres plus généraux sur les topics de la santé, comme ça. Et ce qu'on a essayé de faire, c'est vraiment de choisir des auteurs qui venait de la discipline de l'architecture ou des études de la ville, mais aussi des experts au regard de la santé ou des problématiques spécifiques comme les allergies, l'asthme, comme ça. Il était un peu le défi, c'était de faire que tout le monde, aussi s'il y avait une personne qui était expert des allergies, un médecin, en effet, il écrivait sur la relation entre l'allergie, les matériaux, l'architecture. C'est-à-dire, quand même, c'était important que les livres publiés par le CCA, le centre, c'est l'architecture, il y avait un lien entre l'écriture, les maladies, toutes ces études et l'architecture même. Donc, il y avait des personnes qui étaient déjà en train de travailler sur certains de ces sujets, comme David Giesen, qui avait déjà travaillé sur le problème de la pollution. Toutes les personnes, ils ont fait un nouveau texte, un nouveau essai, une nouvelle recherche pour nous. La chose qu'ils ont compris, c'était aussi que c'était un livre qui devait mettre ensemble toute cette écriture et écrits différents sur des problématiques très différentes, mais qu'à la fin serait un livre. Donc aussi il était un dialogue soutenu avec les personnes qui écrivaient pour comprendre que chacun devait toucher certains arguments, mais qu'il n'y avait pas de répétitions environ dans les livres.
So, Mirko, what do you think of the choice of the other authors?
I could also do Cherry Rose.
No, it's more, fortunately, I'm thinking of some other
questions.
Some other characters, some other female person. No, but so we can do like Oprah and make the launch of the books, and I'm sure it becomes a bestseller. So no, if you look at the exhibition, you know that there are these kind of themes around which we try to organize and collect all the projects dealing with this issue coming from our daily life: allergy, asthma, cancer, epidemic, obesity, aging. And we collect projects which are presenting contradictory point of views or different interpretation of these kind of issues. Inside the issue itself, if you look on this vitrine that are kind of windows on the outside reality from architecture in the exhibition, you see that there are contradictory perspectives. So it was our idea was really not to expose a solution, especially related to medical issues. Very dangerous to pretend that one solution is the real one, but to expose the different interpretation, different point of view. So also the choice of the authors was very, very difficult in this respect. We didn't want, and we tried always to present a little bit of people who were presenting some questions and raising some issues. For example, on one side, you have some historians who are telling the story of the modern architecture and health. How the interpretation of health in the first building of modernity in the 20s and the 30s has produced a certain kind of style, character in modern architecture. For example, the Margaret Campbell, she was one of the first to study. Now there are other studies to study. In fact, one of the problems was that we were not able to find her for a long period of time. We were looking for this person who wrote these very important articles, and that everybody has forgotten. Sometimes in the last more recent studies, somebody was quoting this, and she disappeared, because I think it was, we never discovered the age of this person, but I think she is now retired. And this was a very important contribution that she gave at the beginning of her academic career. and then disappeared from the scene. So it was very, I would like to thank the team for the incredible detective work that has been done in order to track this person. Anyway, she is telling the story of this relation with architecture and health in modernity, and this kind of introduction of this idea of the large windows, the ideas of the balcony, the idea of also the special chairs, for example, in the sanatorium, and how this kind of elements, they became then a standard element characterizing the modern architecture. In a moment in which there was a very strong relationship, as always modernity, on the power of architecture to really resolve the problem. So there was the thinking that sanatoriums were really useful. Unfortunately, other historians have recently demonstrated that, for example, in the case of England, 85% of the patients in sanatoriums, they died. And that the solution of the tuberculosis was mainly given by the use of antibiotics, and not for sure by the wonderful modern architecture of the sanatorium, the pure air in the mountains, and these kind of things. So this is an idea of relationship with architecture, and health. And then we wanted to show in another period of what was the shift in this kind of thinking. So we decided to include this very interesting contribution by Sarah Schrank, which is, and perhaps before you saw some images, perhaps some of you have been attracted by these images, because she studied what was the role of the naked body in the 1950s and 60s in the suburban idea. So her work was analyzing how, in reality, the suburban world was deeply related to this idea of a body and health related to the tanned body in that of the people in the secluded private garden in the back of these suburban housing getting tanned in order to have the perfect fit body corresponding to the cultural and aesthetic ideal of that moment. So Sarah was very good in that. She did a very nice selection of images that in the magazine of that period, but also is telling you how the idea of health, or the myth of health in that period, in the 50s and 60s, was different than the one in the 20s and 30s, in which sanatorium, the pure air, was in that moment the kind of, how can I say, hygienic idea architectures were referring to. 50s and 60s was this kind of body which was referring to, and David Gibson, perhaps that Giovanna has mentioned before, is presenting this idea of pollution, and not anymore as hygiene, as one new category at the base of a lot of investigation of contemporary architecture, in which the polluted air is becoming, is going to get incorporated in the facade of the buildings and becoming the aesthetic representation of the building. There are still projects, but more and more you have this kind of proposal of buildings covered with this kind of special net, electrostatic treated generally, which attract all the polluted particles in the area. So giving to the building, they are also, one image is also on the banner outside, giving this image of this kind of strange figures, dirty and gray, representing, for example, a contemporary museum. So this is telling you one effort, the presentation of these different studies, the effort that we wanted to represent in this book, how in reality every time architecture is referring to different kind of cultural idea of health, and how this is deeply informing the representation in architecture, but very often also the projects in architecture. So, Giovanna, I don't know now what you ask yourself one question, then we can open the.
So maybe how is built the kind of like this.
Oh, the sequence. Yeah.
So what we tried to do, and this is also something that we, I think it's part of the editorial, again, strategy of CCA is to build a book that is sustained by by essays with a certain depth and content, but also that could be taken in your hands as Mirko's doing and have a first visual appreciation or understanding of the content, simply going through the images. And so the book is built with this parallel narrative, so that there is a sequence of images that follow one another and tell a story, and then it's interrupted by this moment of like more depth when you enter and you read an essay. Now, working with Lars, we did other books with him, he always explained us that actually at this point a person take a book and never open it in the regular way, and so actually the end is important as the beginning. So in this book, for example, the idea was to have at the beginning a series of images that are part of our collection that are photos by the photographer, Canadian photographer Robert Burley of Olmsted Park. So
I do now the opera.
So the idea of symbolic, the idea also of the public park as a green lung of the city, so the typical kind of like answer, opposed to this kind of like dark skies at the end. So the way we do a book at CCA means that we basically work and build the sequence of the 400 pages, selecting the images for each page, and we actually build it on the wall, and then we look into how this kind of like sequence and the narrative works in order to get this double understanding of the topic, of like the immediacy of going through and have this visual appreciation, and then the other one.
And especially for a topic like this one is very important, because it was very difficult, because the intention was to transmit a message of uncertainty to the reader, also in the exhibition, and never the idea that you can offer them a manual or a solution to the issues. So generally, also in the other books that we did, we always say, okay, there is if you think of other books like Sense of the City, there is the idea that at the very end, what is very important is not the visual, but also other kind of experiences. So there is always a very simple underlying message that is coming out. Sorry Out of Gas was the idea that in the 70s, the research in the architecture and urban design, they were developed a very consistent and sophisticated understanding of energy issues as very general problems, addressing issues of social, political, urban scale, and not only the typical technocratic solution of the insulation of the facade or the solar panel, addressing, for example, the idea of food and waste. So there was always generally a very simple message that you wanted to communicate underneath. In this case, the message that we wanted to give was that in reality is on the limitation of the human action that you can take also in architecture, that every time that you try to solve a problem, you have always a counter, you create a counter problem that you have to analyze properly. For example, in the case of the solution of obesity, perhaps the perfect solution of the active guideline design of New York, they are perfectly good for certain kind of people. It's very nice to walk, to do 3-4 floors of stairs, but perhaps in doing that you segregate a certain kind of the public. Or in the aging, again, the perfect ideological, utopic solution of a total perfect community for the aging people, as old utopia, is producing the most segregated community that you can imagine. or in the case of the green, this fascination that we have today for the green is wonderful, but in reality covering all the buildings with green, placing the green at the center of our thinking of the contemporary urban environment has a lot to do with ideological assumption on the green as a solution, that very often it is not. There is not the green as a pure nature anymore. We live in a green which is always manipulated by us. And in some cases, the green, as other studies have demonstrated, is producing not only beneficial psychological effect, but also, for example, a lot of allergies. So every choice that we do as architects also is producing some counterbalance. And in the exhibition also you see some of these. In the past, architects, they were enthusiastic of the asbestos, and they will use asbestos everywhere. And today, clearly, we pay the consequences of that. In the past, architects, they were really, or our society was totally in favor of an idea of production, which was occupying space and places with no kind of concern and limitation. And today, the most of the project of landscape that we presented are dealing with the idea of repairing this kind of environment totally destroyed by an idea of production which was absolutely, how can I say, didn't find any resistance or any thinking about the possible consequences of that. So it is a book which was, and also an exhibition which perhaps is the most difficult for us, because we wanted to transmit the idea of uncertainty about any action that you can do, and the necessity of a kind of cautionary process in respect to that. That is also the reason that we have this Machiavelli quote, which we found very nice to find Machiavelli in the 16th century to mention in respect to the social and political life of a Renaissance cities, this kind of precautionary, how can I say, note saying that, again, any action that you can do is, any problem that you solve in reality is creating another kind of set of problems that we have to be able to deal with. So that was the reason of this yellow, that is a little bit disturbing, is a little bit medical, which is in the cover and also inside. And also this idea of the medical cover, which is a little bit plastic, like, you know, when you go to the hospital and you find a manual, which is, has to be a little bit hygienic. And so you have this plastic on this, which is in reality showing book, which is, in the text is a little bit a manual and the images is not. So there was a lot of thinking how you communicate this kind of feelings and situation, also these small kind of things. And it was very nice to work with Lars Muller about that. It is, anyway, kind of a project in the project, how you deal with this kind of issues in a book.
Parce que l'autre thématique, et c'est aussi dans l'exposition, c'est que nous, on ne voulait pas montrer effectivement la maladie ou des personnes malades dans l'exposition ou dans les livres. Donc, quand tu peux faire comprendre cette question de santé, de maladie, et même cette idée d'imperfection, quand à la fin tu montres seulement des images qui aussi s'y touchent, même les photos de Jeffrey James de la montagne des asbestos, ils sont des paysages merveilleux, c'est-à-dire à les regarder. Alors il y a une certaine esthétisation qui est quand même dans tous les matériaux qu'on a utilisés, et c'était quand à la fin on va adresser cette problématique de la maladie, de l'imperfection, de quelque chose ça marche pas, si à la fin tout ce que tu as c'est visuellement très esthétique et très belle. Alors c'est pour ça qu'effectivement avec Lars on a travaillé sur introduire cette comme Mirko a dit, le jaune ou certains caractères, certaines choses qui sont soulignées pour effectivement rendre un peu cette disturb qui est dans tous les livres,
Also, it's much faster to go through. You know, sometimes you look at books very fast, so you already saw what is underlined, and you know where you can start and this kind of things. No, there are a lot of how can I say, different levels. I hope that we tried today. We didn't know what to do, how to present a book. Generally, I never go to the book launch. I found that very boring. So generally, if I want to know what is the book about, I read the book. And but I thought that perhaps could be interesting to tell you some of the stories behind the book, which are the problems, the intention, what does it work, how does it work, which are the reason, for example, for this strange cover or some yellow inside, and what is the meaning of a certain, which were the problem in choosing some authors instead of others.